Greetings, loved ones. For those who are leaving violent relationships, it is critical that they create a safety plan. When the victim decides to leave, this is when the relationship becomes deadly. The aggressor realizes that he is losing power and control over his victim, and he can become violent to the point of murdering his partner. A safety plan helps to mitigate the danger and can save your life. So today we're going to talk about safety plans and the 3 types of separation. So to help get these messages out, our purpose is that those who don't know about domestic violence can recognize someone who's suffering and maybe help them. And it's also for those who find themselves in violent situations to realize that there is a way out. So please subscribe to our channel, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and please hit that like button and share these messages with others, because you never know, just by doing so, you could save a life. If you believe that you need a safety plan, don't feel guilty about developing one. Even if you never use it, having a plan will help you remain calmer in moments when conflicts are escalating and danger is evident. It's like preparing for a fire drill. The alarm rings and you know what to do. When you create a safety plan, when danger escalates, you know what to do. Christians often place a high value on marriage, forgiveness, and unity, and many times they feel guilty for leaving a dangerous domestic situation. While we want to affirm these values, consider it this way. The best way to honor someone you love, but who acts with volatility, is to remove the opportunity for them to do greater damage with their anger. Your self-protection is not selfish. It is actually the most loving thing you can do for them and for yourselves. Justin and Lindsay Holcomb, in their book, Is It My Fault? They say, God knows and sees you in your experience of violence and abuse. He loves you through it all, and he greatly desires your safety and protection. God has not forgotten you. He grieves with you. And we hope that knowing this will embolden you to be honest with both him and others, and know that it is courageous, not shameful, to reach out for support. However, it is vital to realize that the act of leaving for safety is not a complete plan. Taking that initial step of leaving, which may or may not result in a prolonged separation, without knowing what you intend to do next and why, can actually increase your danger. Justin and Lindsay Holcomb, again in their book, Is It My Fault? They say, domestic violence does not end immediately with separation from the abuser. It is also dangerous. More than 75% of separated women suffer post-separation abuse. The purpose that we have of these teachings is to help you think through whether separation is needed, and if so, how to wisely walk through the process of separating for safety. So there's 3 different types of separation, and it's important to know what type of separation you will be enacting with your safety plan. It can be helpful to think in terms of 3 types of separation, 2 of which are potentially productive, and the third being common but unproductive. So the first one is separation and cool down. For this separation, you plan to be gone for just a few hours, up to a night, or maybe 2. The purpose of this separation is to prevent a combustible argument from escalating and removing children from being exposed to violence. Children exposed to violence are victims of violence also. So this type of separation is usually best communicated by stating the reason and the desire to resolve the matter later. You could say something like, honey, I love you. The situation is spiraling. I don't want it to harm our marriage further. I'm going with the kids to blah, blah, blah. And we can talk about this more when we both had a chance to calm down. Now, this is not for situations that are violent, where you're being beaten. You can't say this in the middle of it. But, if things are in the beginning stages, you could do this. After a statement like this, you don't need to explain or defend anything, but you should begin to enact the safety plan you have developed. And this approach should not be used more than once or twice, because it will later be perceived as a manipulative tactic, and if it is frequently needed, then a separation for change may be advisable. So let's talk about this separation for change. Now, the first thing before I discuss this is to remind you that abusers mostly don't change. They say they will, they do take a couple steps to convince you to return. Separation for change should be done before things escalate to a dangerous situation. It should be done in the first time the person is being abusive towards you, or within the beginning of the relationship, if things start going down. So let's talk about the separation for change. Keep in mind, abusers don't always change. So when the destructive behavior is frequent, so they're not letting you go out, they're controlling your money, they're saying nasty things to you, this cooperation toward change is low, and there is probable danger to you and to your children, then separation for change is warranted. So in this approach, you plan to remain separated until, and this is key, acknowledgement of the problem is made by the abuser and key markers of change is achieved. This is really important, not just a few things that he's done, but these key markers. And so this indefinite duration of this separation means that more preparation is needed. So because this separation is enacted after resistance to acknowledging the problem has been established, the separation is not disclosed until after it has occurred. So the person's continuing doing these behaviors. You're not going to tell them, hey, I'm going to go, we're going to be separated. You leave. And then afterwards, you communicate with the person. The potentially longer duration of separation means that you have to have adequately planned where you will be able to live. And if these arrangements have not been made, then the domestic violence hotline can connect you with local safe homes. So after you relocate to a safe place, you would communicate the markers for change that would need to be met for returning home to be considered. In any conversation about returning home, the same point should be repeated every time. While there may be secondary changes, each of you are tempted to discuss, like spending more time with the children. I want you to spend more time with the kids. I want you to be more helpful around the house. I want to spend more time with you as a couple. Those are secondary. Separation means there are safety level concerns, and these concerns need to be at the forefront of any conversation about returning home. So what are these standard markers that you would list and demand to be changed before you could return home? Now remember, most aggressors do not change. So in this situation, you need to make sure that they have completed. We want to be with the person that we love. And so many times we compromise. This is a list that you cannot compromise on, because if you compromise on it, you will go back before the aggressor has changed their behavior and things will return to the way they were. So let's look at what these standard markers for change would look like. So one would be meeting with a counselor experienced in the area of struggle, i.e. domestic violence, addiction, etc. Meaning the aggressor must go to counseling, and the female will go to counseling too, but not together. We'll explain that in a minute. Describe the life struggle to the counselor without minimizing or blame shifting. So the aggressor needs to discuss what he's doing and take responsibility for what he's doing. And the victim needs to be honest about what's going on with her counselor. Another thing that you could do is sign a release of information to allow you, the victim, to be a guest at your spouse's, the aggressor's counseling, to share your perspective on the history of the relationship. Because listen to me, when he goes in there, he's going to say, she does this, she does that. He's not going to take any responsibility for anything. And he'll paint a picture one way. So by having your aggressor sign this release, that would enable you to go in and talk to the counselor. So I want to make a note here. Because abuse is about power and control, a victim and their aggressor should never be in counseling together, as it puts part of the blame on the victim, and the aggressor can use the counseling session to further perpetrate violence against this victim. So this marker for change, allowing the victim to meet with the aggressor's counselor, is only for the counselor to have enough information about what is going on in order to prevent the aggressor from manipulating the situation and lying about what is really going on. So some other markers that you could list would be confirmation from the counselor that the two accounts reasonably reconcile with one another to verify the absence of minimization or blame shifting. Another marker would be initial steps toward change, complete change as defined by the counselor. So the counselor would describe what this person needs to do in order to change. And the promises of doing these things doesn't signify that you can go home. You need to see over time that these changes actually occurred. Another marker could be mutually agreeable accountability pursued within the shared network of mutual relationships. Entonces, you guys are, especially the aggressor, not just you, but the aggressor is being held accountable with other people with whom you have relationships. And then another marker would be the commitment of the aggressor to continue in counseling process after you return home, stated to counselor and accountability relationships. So you need to be honest with a counselor and trusted friends about the real history of your relationship, tangible evidences of change, and a commitment to continued marital restoration. This is if you're going back. This is really a touchy situation and a difficult situation. So we're going to talk more about this in a bit. A separation for change is a declaration that the relationship has deteriorated to such a degree that non-intensive measures will not be sufficient for restoration. It can be hard to know that the marriage is in this condition. That is why making this assessment in concert with your pastor and or counselor is advised. This social support will be beneficial in following through on your commitments if there is not early cooperation, like crying, pleading on the phone, rants to friends, lies to children, etc. So let's discuss the most common separation. This one does not have reconciliation in it, and it is separation for security. Somebody's life is in danger. Somebody is suffering severe abuse, and this may be the most frequent form. In this case, separation is used as security for those in danger because the aggressor has no intent on changing his behavior and there is risk of further violence or even murder. It's important to remember that abuse is about control and power. The aggressor has learned these manipulative and abusive behaviors throughout their entire life, and change takes time, if it can happen at all. And when I'm talking about time, I'm talking about months and years. But it begins with your safety. Then it continues with the abuser's acceptance of responsibility for their violence and actions, and then a commitment to real actions to change their behavior with accountability to somebody outside of your relationship. Again, most abusers do not change. Many abusers use counseling and other actions as manipulative tactics to regain control of their victims. So be very, very careful. With 1 in 3 women experiencing domestic violence worldwide, the question is not if you will encounter a victim of violence. The question before God is what will you do when you do encounter them? You could be the person who saves a life. It's not their business. It's your business. If you know somebody is suffering violence, you need to step out and reach out to them. You are called. We are all called to be champions for justice. And those who suffer violence, they need to know that those who love them and even those who don't even know them will step out and reach out to them to give them the help and the courage they need to leave before it's too late. Help us get these messages out. Subscribe to our channel. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Hit that like button. And please share these messages with others because you never know, just by doing so, you could save a life. If you're a victim of violence, know that you are valued, you are loved, you are intelligent, and you are beautiful. God does not want you to suffer violence. He wants you to live free from violence in peace and tranquility. There is a way out. It is not your fault. Abuse is not love. If you're a victim of violence, reach out to someone for help. If you find yourself in a dangerous situation, call 911. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about how you can create a safety plan. So until then, God bless you.